Today's episode is brought to you by FreedomProject Academy. Looking for a K-12 classical online school built on Judeo-Christian values? FPA is enrolling now for the fall. Request your free information packet at freedomforschool.com. That's freedom, F-O-R, school.com.
It's time to get educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. I'm David Fiorazzo, sitting beside Katie Petrick. And before we get started, please hit that share button so we can educate more patriots, raise awareness, and get parents involved across the country. All right, today we start in Pennsylvania, where the Philadelphia School District is actively encouraging teachers to attend sex conferences that discuss kink, BDSM, sex toys, and transgender surgery for teens to better understand the, quote, issues facing the trans community. So there are videos we'll get to in a minute, but here's one of the headlines over the Daily Caller. School district encouraging Philly teachers to attend Banging Beyond Binaries, Triple B, for those keeping score at home, BDSM, and that is a conference that we're talking about. And the disclaimer, the purpose of this workshop is to showcase the different types of prosthetics available for sex. Almost all of these prosthetics look like a male body part. So
That's the way to do it. That's
Katie,
right.
Usually you get those.
That's correct.
The disclaimers.
So this was happening again in Philadelphia, and we know about this type of thing again from the one, the only Christopher Rufo, who likes to take to Twitter and let everyone know what is happening in your kid's school district across the nation. And he always starts his tweets out with a scoop. Last year, the school district of Philadelphia encouraged teachers to attend, and we've talked about the transgender conference with all the lovely words there, and he got some exclusive videos. We will show you one of them momentarily. And of course, it all will shock you or not shock you if you've been around the Dr. Duke Show, because we see these pretty much all the time.
Yes.
Now, again, we must remember this is the school district of Philadelphia sending educators an email that encouraged them to attend this Zoom conference because everything's on the Zoom. And so trans activist Chase Ross hosted, a series of different sessions on packers and masturbation sleeves and prosthetics for sex, demonstrating a variety of dildos for all of the teachers watching. It's a big boy. This is like gigantic, he said during one of the demos. Give me 2 hours alone and I'll get this in my back end.
Wow.
That's what every educator should be spending their time doing, being on Zoom, listening to this trash.
So Katie, let me ask you about this real quick. There's a district office of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes.
Is this common, like in every high school, junior high, middle school now? Is this across the country? Because this is tedious.
This is exactly what's been happening at the college level. And if it happens at the college level,
of course,
it trickles on down to the K-12. And so now, especially in the big cities, but mom and dad, take a Google search right now onto your kid's school district website and see if they have an office that is, if it says, diversity or equity or inclusion, or hey, if they're really inclusive, they will include all three in the title of that office. And these school districts are getting your taxpayer money to apparently enroll their teachers into these Zoom classes in this conference. So let's take a look at just one of them. Hey, well, this one was done by a doctor. Hey, a doctor got involved.
Dr. Scott Moser.
This should be good, right? Well, except that Dr. Scott Moser explained that he's performed over 2,000 top surgeries, meaning he's cut off the breasts of females, which involved, yes, removing girls' breasts, and that there's no age limit for beginning the gender journey, as he calls it. Let's just see what he says.
In the GCC, Gender Confirmation Center in San Francisco, we kind of have these like secret missions. Now that it's on a slide, these public secret missions, which are, one of them is that we try to live with our values 30 to 40 years in the future. So, and that puts us in a mindset of extreme affirmation, because affirmation at that time is a foregone conclusion. This is a time in the future when gender is just a thing. Nobody makes a big deal out of it. People are being screened as children and adolescents for their gender journey, and appropriate steps are taken to get them involved in a multidisciplinary process to get them where they need to go. That's the future. I do not have a minimum age of any sort in my practice. There's no chronological age that says you don't get surgery. Now, having said that, I don't think I've ever done a consult on a 12-year-old yet, but we would if one came our way. We just haven't had reason to. And then we've done a number of 13-year-olds who we did consults on. I think I've done 1 or 2 13-year-old surgeries. For the most part, it's 14 and up, that by the time everything comes together, plus insurance approval, plus everything, that surgery actually gets completed.
Again, you just heard from a doctor and from San Francisco. Did I hear that right? And did you notice one thing toward the end there? Minimum age? None. So they're saying no minimum age for this child, this physical mutilation, and what they're doing to kids. It really is a shame.
And why he's saying they're living 30 years into the future. They're having their values live 30 years into the future when they really should have their values living a couple thousand years into the past. Look at the Bible. And then maybe these acts would not be happening to our children, but instead we're in the future, 30 years, because gender just poof, gone. Magic.
With all the censorship taking place on social media platforms, we've made it easy to keep up with your favorite content. Simply download the Freedom Project Media app in your app store. Get access to 18 new videos a week, plus thousands of archived shows, lecture series, and educational animations. Download the Freedom Project Media app on your Apple TV, Roku, tablet, or phone, and make sure you allow for notifications to keep you informed.
Before we move on, please do take a moment to consider supporting the work we do here at Freedom Project. If you enjoy our content, please consider joining the Patriot Club with one little donation. And then once you make that donation, as a simple token of our appreciation, we will send you our trademark American Patriot Tumbler. Simply visit patriotclub.us to get signed up. That's patriotclub.us, because we need your support to keep doing this show. Now, if you've ever, even for a moment, considered going down under to Australia, don't. Because at least if you're going to go to Australia, do not go to the museums. You may find men in lingerie there, just playing with Lego alongside children. Because that's normal now. The Australian Museum in Sydney, which is the country's, I guess, or at least the city's oldest museum, has defended offering a safe place where everyone feels welcome after a man was seen and got caught on, there you go, images, on photo, wearing women's lingerie. He was photographed while playing with Lego right there with the kiddos. And the photos were taken at a Nights at the Museum event that was held in April. And they were shared to Twitter by a user with the handle @SydneyRadFem. So, as you can see, they are showing a man wearing black fishnet stockings and pink boots and women's underwear. And you know it's women's underwear because you can see it. We're not just guessing. You can see it. And then the man is sitting right next to another person who has a top hat on, because why wouldn't you wear a hat indoors, honestly? And then they're playing with the Lego blocks, surrounded by the young kiddos who are also playing with the Lego blocks. So now the woman who actually took the pictures said that you let a male in fetish gear play in the kids' Lego pit during the school holidays. When I spoke to security, they said they could do nothing and pointed me to the organizer. He's sitting there with his full package out. Disgusting. I think she's pretty accurate in that assessment, personally. If I was at a Lego night with my kiddos and that happened, guess where Lego night would be moved to? My own house, because we're not going to hang out while he's hanging out.
So do you think the parents of these kids didn't know this was going on? Did they just drop them off, and did these guys show up later?
It could be a little of everything, because honestly, there are so many parents these days who are just, they don't want to deal with what's happening with the culture, but they also don't want to be offensive. So they just pretend like it's not happening, kind of like all these people are pretending of what they're doing or trying to be. So instead of the parents seeing that and saying, no, we're not going to have this exposed to my kids, and have the kids leave, some parents just looked over here and pretended like nothing was happening.
Well, there's a full statement here. I'd just like to read one of the sentences, Katie. The Australian Museum is committed to being a safe place where everyone feels welcome. There's one of the code words again. There's diversity, there's equity, and there's, inclusion and welcoming. Welcoming.
Welcome.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Welcome everyone.
Now, they're saying that the images were taken and all that, but multiple members of our security and programming teams spoke with the woman who took the images on the evening following the concerns she raised regarding two people wearing fancy dress. I guess that's what it's called now, fancy dress. Oh, you Aussies. The teams investigated and confirmed that the individuals in fancy dress were keeping to themselves and had not done anything wrong.
Fancy dress.
Fancy dress. Now, we feel this was fully addressed by the Australian Museum on the night of the event and will not be engaging with the thread Sydney Radfem has started about this on Twitter nearly 3 weeks later. So everything was fine until someone pointed out that fancy dress by the fancy boys was happening with children playing Lego.
Yes, the Australian Museum addressed the fancy dress individuals, and they have no problem with that. And
No.
they thought the mom, was that a mom? The mom of one of the kids
mom,
there?
yep. Mm-hmm.
They complained or shared this. She was like, who cares?
The fact that they say that the individuals in the fancy dress, and I'm going to keep saying it, fancy dress, were keeping to themselves and they'd not done anything wrong, except that they thought that they should be at a family night event where there's a bunch of kids playing Lego because they're grown adults playing Lego, which is in itself its own issue. And yet, here they are in fancy dress playing Lego.
Today's show is sponsored by our friends at MyPillow. Save up to 66% on all items at MyPillow.com when you use the code Dr. Duke. That's DRDUKE. Support this show by supporting a great American company.
You know, as a mom, I'm always looking for kids' literature, looking for new books at the library, seeing what Amazon has. You know, you're supposed to read to your children. 500 books by kindergarten or something like that, or 1,000 books. We're going to be way over it, so I don't even care of the number. Now moving on. But I don't want kids' literature like what was just brought to my attention. There's been attention been paid now to an alphabet book for kids. And it's called M is for mustache. Why? Just look at the cover alone.
Oh, it's a
All right.
Pride ABC book.
Yes, it's a Pride ABC book. We have to
okay.
be specific. You know, M is for mustache, and it's
Okay.
written by Catherine Hernandez, illustrated by Marissa Fireball. Now, according to the Amazon, which is where you can find this book, the summary says, it's Pride, and it's time for a young queer spawn, we'll get to that term in a moment, for a young queer spawn to get ready for the march. Join her and her beloved chosen family members as they dress up and get down to celebrate their beautiful love. Told in an ABC format, tiny readers will delight in all the sparkles, noisemakers, and mustaches as this unique family takes to the streets in joyful jubilee. The reading age, mind you, David, is 3 to 5 years. So darn it, I guess my kids are just too young. They won't be able to read this one.
Darn.
What alarmed me even more, being as frugal, parsimonious as I am, is that this book costs $23.63. Surely it must be a great book. I mean, if it's worth $23.63, what's on the inside of said book? Well, again, it's in alphabet form, so each little paragraph here is a different letter of the alphabet. So we'll just start with the C. C is for colors, which make up the rainbow flags we hold, because we always like colors, and it's always about the pride flag and everything they do.
Let's talk about D. D stands for doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter where we came from or what body parts we have. We are beautiful.
Oh, you are beautiful, David. You really are. Now, as you see, we have to have a little bit of everyone, because if you don't include every single type of person, then you are just a bigot. So we have, I think, a mom there on the left holding a baby with
Yes.
another child behind, and yet I see okay, so a female, and then that's a female and a female, and then maybe. Where are the dads in this? That's why I take a look at this picture. I don't see any dads.
That's a good question.
I mean, I do see someone in roller skates. That's something. That's we're trying to be as inclusive as we can without having any males.
Okay.
Apparently, even though there are some biological males.
Yep.
There for sure.
Well, yeah, we thought fancy pants or fancy dress.
Fancy dress.
Fancy dress was bad. Let's move on in the alphabet though. G is for glitter. So our sparkly outsides match our sparkly insides.
No, I'm not a biologist, but I don't know that my insides are sparkly in any way, shape, or form. And if they are, then I'm probably dead on a gurney.
I don't think a real doctor in the hospital doing a surgery and seeing someone's insides would say they sparkle. H is for hands, which we use to sign our happiness in sign language when our deaf friends march past.
Now that one is probably the best letter of the whole alphabet, because yes, this is, clapping. Great, that's fine. This is clapping, because I mean, this is clapping, which fine.
Okay.
H, we'll take H. Probably the only letter we'll take, because here's the deal. Queer spawn, I teased it earlier. But
What is
David,
it?
what is queer spawn,
Yeah.
you ask? Well, Q is for queer spawn. Queer spawn is one word for kids as lucky as me to have parents who are lesbian or gay or bi or trans or queer or two-spirit.
Wow.
Or that makes absolutely no sense.
This is tragic because they're reaching children with this. Look at on the t-shirts they're wearing. 2 dads are better than 1. So if you only have 1 dad, if you have a mom and a dad at home, that's not as good as having 2 dads. And then I love my moms, plural. So 2 moms is better than 1 mom and 1 dad. So they are teaching kids that to have multiple parents or gay, lesbian, whatever, multiples is better than just a basic mom and dad. That's not good enough. In fact, that's frowned upon now. This is where they're taking this, isn't that?
Well, and that's absolutely the thing. So we are all being told we're bigots if you say, like, I heart my mom or my mom and dad are awesome.
Wow.
And they're flipping it on the head to now say that you have to say the opposite of mom and dad and say moms. And that's not bigoted at all. And that's not offensive to you straight weirdos who have a mom and a dad, because how dare you say anything negative of us? Like, they've taken the entire narrative and flipped it on its head for them. And we as a society are just allowing it to happen because we also, again, don't want to be offensive. But what they're doing is more than offensive, obviously.
What's amazing is people are apparently going along with this because I don't see as much pushback as you would think you would want to see in a society where, what is the percentage of population that is LGBTQ? Isn't it still under 4%, Katie?
About that, yeah. About
Of the
there.
entire population?
Of the entire population.
Yes.
And those who are trans. And the thing is, we've talked about this before. If you look at it pretty much putting the striations by age, you can see a direct correlation to if you identify as trans versus your age. The older you are, way less likely to identify as trans, because guess what? It's not a cool fad or thing to do and be on TikTok about, like it is with the very young generation and the indoctrination that is happening directly in the schools, and them pushing it is what's happening. Now, I just want to be upfront here with this book, M is for Mustache. It's actually been around since 2015. That's when it originally was published, but it's now really being brought out into the light, I guess, if you will. The darkness is coming out into the light here, and basically we should shove it back into the darkness.
Yes, we should. It's still dark. Queer spawn, a fancy dress. That was the previous. Anyway, before we go, coming right up. All right, well, education content is always the primary focus of the Dr. Duke Show. Before we go, let's leave you with some other stories worthy of a comment or two, and let's start at the University of Illinois, Chicago School of Public Health, where a dietitian says the word obesity must be canceled because of the stigma. In an article entitled Addressing Weight Stigma and Fat Phobia in Public Health, author Amanda Montgomery says instead of, quote, focusing on the narrative that weight is a controllable personal responsibility, we need to treat, quote, weight stigma as a social justice issue. Well, of course. She says, though lifestyle factors such as nutrition and exercise are important, it is essential to note the historical racism and injustices with our current food environment. Oh my goodness. She also adds that more people are obese these days because, quote, the U.S. food system is built on stolen land and using stolen labor from black and indigenous people, end quote. So again, the argument, it's the fork and spoon's fault. Okay then, I know you're wanting to say something about that. Katie, go ahead.
Personal responsibility. Stop. End. Done.
That was it. Short and sweet. Okay, speaking of nonsense, it brings me to, great sorrow to report that Netflix has already scrapped two of the 3 projects they committed to making with race baiter and divider Ibram X. Kendi. The world's largest streaming service says it will no longer produce a preschool-oriented, quote, anti-racist baby cartoon series, by the way, based on the book by Kendi. Netflix also scrapped the second part of a documentary entitled Stamped: Racism, Anti-Racism, and You. Stamped from the Beginning is still moving forward, which focuses on race in America. Finally, let's wrap things up with some creepy technology, as Zoom is in talks to develop a tool that will detect a user's emotions during video calls. Now, the video conferencing service says the artificial intelligence tool would detect users' emotions by scanning facial expressions and exam vocal tones. However, some people are not on board. In fact, 25 groups, including Access Now, the the American Civil Liberties Union, and the Muslim Justice League, sent a letter to the company rebuking the idea, saying, quote, if Zoom advances with these plans, this feature will discriminate against people of certain ethnicities and people with disabilities, hard-coding stereotypes into millions of devices. No word yet if Zoom will continue their pursuit of detecting user emotions. Katie, can you tell what I'm thinking about this story, what my emotions are, just by looking at my face?
Do you have to use the restroom?
No.
Is that what's happening over there?
No.
All right, now that we're done with all of the feelings talk, that does it for this show. For all of us here at Freedom Project, please stay educated, my friends.